Okay, it's been an official year since I set my Nintendo Switch 2 predictions in stone, and a lot has changed over the course of that year due to procrastination, general laziness, and a complete change of lifestyle. I am now a father. I totally forgot to release my Nintendo Switch 2 or even do my Nintendo Switch 2 predictions video. And back then, there were very, very scarce leaks. So what I was gonna say is like really cool, bleeding edge and new and sweet and stuff. But you know, the horde of Nintendo Switch 2 leakers have beat me to the punch. And we now know exactly what the Nintendo Switch 2 is inside and out, which is funny because people act like we still don't, which is so weird. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, what is the Earth flat to you? Like, we have everything. We have a massive series of marketing leaks. We have information from a Chinese stock exchange. Like, we have everything. We know exactly what this console is. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to reveal my Nintendo Switch 2 predictions and then compare and contrast them with what we now know the Nintendo Switch 2 to actually be. This this is such a dry run. And I'm gonna make so many errors. I'm gonna be laughing the whole time, and I'm probably gonna say something about holding 8 inches in your hand. That's not the point. The point is, let's look at a correct and well aggregated list of all the information that we know is factually true about what a Nintendo Switch 2 is. Cut halfway if you don't want to see my predictions. Let's run it. Okay. God, I just PowerPointed August 12th. Okay. Okay, it's going to be a 0.5 upgrade, not a big leap in technology. It will only have 64 gigabytes of onboard storage, probably solid state drive. We'll have only 8 gigabytes of RAM. I would have argued DDR5. We'll have a 120 hertz at 1080p 8-inch LCD screen. That's haunting. We'll have expandable memory via an SD card slot. Who could have guessed? And it won't reach true 4K even in docked. Only 4K at 60 hertz. More obvious assumptions and predictions. The console is basically still a Switch 1. The new Joy-Con have all the original Joy-Con features, no new rumble, maybe a new button or two, maybe one new capability. The new Joy-Con are bigger only because the screen of the newer console is slightly nominally bigger. All released Switch controllers and hub adapters are still compatible, and it will run Switch 1 games natively. No emulation, true backwards compatibility. So what do I mean by a 0.5 upgrade? A 0.5 upgrade akin to Xbox One to Xbox One X, not Xbox Series X. Games still won't look that good to certain people. Will look very similar to Switch 1 games. See, all that power is going towards speed, PS5, loading style. But we're still going to get that PS3, PS4 quality. Not a big difference in frame rate and resolution to most eyes. Switch 2 games will be on cards to be read in the same exact slot as Switch 1 games. No difference in form factor, the same type of SD cards in shape. So SD card prediction. There will be SD card speed limits. You cannot use old SD cards as storage for new Nintendo Switch 2 games. Simply not enough speed to run the games. Launch date predictions. The console will launch at $400 in 2025 during August or later. Absolutely not before. It will be a disaster like the Wii U in North America. Overproduced and underbought. The common audience won't be interested because the price tag will be too high. It will be too similar to the previous product, and there will be no interesting launch titles for casuals. Hardware and operating system predictions. The new Joy-Con will still be bad. For me, it's just a thing with Nintendo. Historically bad controllers. The Nintendo 64, burn your hand. GameCube, what are these? Why don't they go in when I touch them? Why do I have to hold them? 70 of the way down before they do anything. The Wii, the Wii, the Wii U, giant, massive fucking tablet, and like barely use touchscreen controls for anything that it would actually be necessary for. It's like it's a great idea. It's a great idea. They did nothing. They did nothing with it. And then the Switch, you know, the infamous dual stick drift, peeling rubber, hard plastic, injures your hands. The dock will have nominal issues, and people exaggerate them yet again. Scratches my screen, doesn't connect when I put the console in, breaks too easily. Will be the first Nintendo console in history to have true party chat. Most first-party games will concentrate on touchscreen use. And the same Nintendo eShop you're used to. As for the software lineup prediction, Metroid Prime 4, I think it had already been announced, not much of a prediction, will be a launch title, but will also release on the Switch 1 simultaneously. This may confuse older parents buying the incorrect version. Super Mario Sunshine 2, and it might be a little bit late as opposed to a true launch title. Pokemon, once again, announced. I think it was pretty obvious that it was going to be a Switch 2 launch title, but I believe it's not going to be produced at all for the Switch 1. Mario Kart 9, same goes, will be produced for the Switch 2, will not play on the Switch 1, will not be produced for the Switch 1. Animal Crossing New Horizons 2, or whatever they're going to call it, will release sometime within the first 6 months, 8 months. A new fitness game, whether that's Ring, boxing, Wii Fit, whatever they decide to call it. And then, of course, Splatoon 4. But I think that's a little post launch. All right, that cuts it. And we're just going to run back for the light. Opt in. Okay. Well, the next part is where things get confusing and I'm going to choke on my tongue like 80 times, but it's okay. Okay, so got a beautiful aggregate list of information that I slapped together. Let me get myself the hell out of the way. So this is what we got. I'm totally pointing the wrong direction. Yes, that seems unnatural. That feels absolutely unnatural. Anyway, okay, so we have the parts slash the specs, as like people like to call them, the stuff that's inside the console. We have the names of those parts, and then how we know that those are facts. And then we have a fourth column for absolutely nothing because I got carried away and then I realized I didn't have anything to fill in the fourth column with. Okay, processor and graphics card. Well, in the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch 2, they happen to be one and the same, SoC. I tend to refer to this as the whole system on chip as opposed to just system on chip because I think that adjective is quite important. And what we got here as the SoC is a Tegra 3239 CPU. It clocks in at 1.9 gigahertz. I think it's going to be throttled down to about 1.6 compared to that of the PS4's 1.6 gigahertz processor. I think it's pretty obvious the picture that it paints. This is going to be a fast console and it's going to be newer, more modern technology. But in sheer force, what we're going to see is a return to archaic basics. This is Nintendo playing their own game. What do they call it? Open ocean marketing. As for how we know that, and then the video was hacked. NVIDIA was hacked. And on top of that, I think there have been a few manufacturer leaks. You're welcome to Google that. Moving on. Screen. 8-inch LCD. Called it. I probably just added like 0.5 of an inch or something. I don't remember. I just thought, oh, like that sounds like a good number. It probably compared it to like the ROG Ally, Ally 2, Steam Deck. It just made sense. Just seemed right. Manufacturer leak. all sorts of cases from different protective hardware companies, and a dummy. There were a few dummy leaks from that got sent to a few YouTubers, and of course they talked it up. Who knows if they're in lawsuits? Nintendo. Ooh. But the point is, yeah, 8-inch LCD screen, not OLED. I personally love OLED, but I argue against the technology merely for the fact that Nintendo is known as a producer of consoles that are meant to be used also, not specifically for, but meant to be used also by children. And OLED is quite a fragile technology, really easy to damage your screen, burn in organic material, really easy to overheat, not to think too deeply, not be too studied on how to treat your products. This is too much to know these days. And yeah, Nintendo made a smart choice, in my opinion, the better choice. Um, as for RAM, uh, 12 gigabytes of LPDDR5X at a clock speed of 7,500. That's the fast DDR. That's insane, and that's way more than I thought it was going to be. I honestly, I thought, if you remember, you can rewind, go back. I thought it was going to be 8 gigabytes. No, 12. 12 is huge. 12 is unnecessary. 12 is in some ways overkill. 8 gigabytes, you got a game and you've got an operating system. What do you need 12 gigabytes for? So what we have here, I think, is going to be a very, very, very fast booting, very, very fast game loading console. It's going to be very, very powerful. And I think people are going to have a lot of fun playing Legend of Zelda games and other games where things are procedurally generated, like Spelunky or No Man's Sky. Uh, it's kind of common these days, like a lot of not the world is randomly generated, but things get popped in and loaded over the course of time. Back in the day, we used to have clipping and cutting. You used to feel the loading, and now everything feels so natural when you have like the right piece of hardware that's kind of strong. Uh, you know, Forgive Starfield on Xbox, which, oh my God, it just felt so bad loading, and even Cyberpunk on console felt awful. Um, it really did. It felt awful. There's a lot of loading. Um, but I think it says something. I think what we're getting here is power very, very specifically guided in one direction as opposed to the other. I don't think we're getting a huge upgrade in resolution. This is all about Nintendo playing their own games. It's all about speed. It's all about loading. It's all about instant gratification and satisfaction. Um, SD card. This is my SD card prediction you saw. Uh, what we know about the SD card is micro SD Express 9.1. I think that's copyrighted by Samsung question mark. Samsung? Toshiba? One of the two. Um, and then there are 4 speed classes. 100, 300, 400, 600, 650, or is it 450? And I have a very strong feeling that it's going to end up being one of the two middle classes specifically for use, and anything better will also be usable, and anything below won't be. And we know this because of just the simultaneous leak of information from manufacturers and then also the Samsung press release. It was just very convenient at the same day, same time when it was announced by people who would be selling and shipping their product, right? It is very obvious that I think this is going to be a part of the Nintendo Switch. This is confirmed. Um, Provided onboard storage. Okay, so OCZ Toshiba, so OCZ is kind of like a spin-off brand, like a label for specific solid state drives. But a new company has kind of like spun out of Toshiba, and it's majority stake owned by like Mitt Romney or some shit. Um, it's a Koiksha, I think it's how it's pronounced. And we have this brand new technology called UFS, Universal Face Storage, Universal. I'm already forgetting. But what we have here is multiple size models, and what's been being semi-debated right now is which one is going to see use in the Nintendo Switch, or if there will be multiple Nintendo Switch models with multiple size. Uh, you can choose your own. Um, but it looks like it's going to be the 256 gigabyte UFS. Um, and it's just called the V 4.0. It has a read speed of 2,100 megabytes, which is insane. But of course, space in the onboard storage is going to be dedicated to the operating system, and depending on how big the operating system is, you may have more or less memory. My guess, based on the operating system of the Xbox Series X and the operating system of the PS5, I would assume about 100 gigabytes. And that's being generous in a negative way. It's assuming that the operating system is going to be way less optimized. They're going to have a lot of functions, so assuming it's going to be way bigger than it might actually be, knowing that Nintendo is kings of optimization for their own hardware. Uh, but if the operating system is 100 gigabytes, you deduct 100 from 256, you get 156. So you got 156 gigabytes to play with. Uh, Video games, AAA, full titles, as I call them, 60 to 70 buck games, range between like 12 to 20 gigabytes. So 20 into 160, you're looking at 8 games, I guess. And we know this from, yet again, another manufacturer leak. Media block, the potential of the processor, uh, digital interface, display interface, and frame rate. We know that it's competently capable of HDMI 2.1 if enough of the bandwidth and the design is dedicated to simply implementing that factor, use of HDMI 2.1. So it's going to be an HDMI 2.1 console, which means you might see 120 hertz. I'm still arguing against it, but that does mean it's going to hit 120 hertz max at all. You're not going to see anything better than that from the console. And the console, because of its parts, is going to be capable of DLSS 2.2, and because of and that's based on obviously, like I just said, it's based on other specs that you can deduce that. And then on top of that, it was a leak from the NVIDIA hack that yeah, the console it will be capable of DLSS, uh, maybe not specifically 2.2, but in some variant version or form. The console is going to launch at $400 USD, based on speculative bulk price on parts summarized. To add the value of everything put together based on the cheapest price that Nintendo could get them at. And yeah, you wind up just under or just over $400. I have a very strong feeling that Nintendo's not going to be selling these consoles at a loss, which is really cool, really good on their part. And then ultimately, we have the console release date. We now know exactly when the console is coming out due to a manufacturer leak of protective parts. Multiple manufacturers leaking their sleeves and their glass screens, and so that release date, March 28th. So me assuming it would be after August. Of course, this is it's pretty set in stone. I mean, you're not going to release protective hardware for a console that does not exist yet. You're not going to put on a retail shelf. This is a great way to have retailers throw your stuff into the garbage because it's taking up shelf space because nobody's buying it. And of course, they're not going to rebuy and invest in it when people aren't buying it. So this is pretty firm. I think we pretty much know that this is going to be the date, unless it was a filler date, uh, which is uncommon as far as I know. So that is aggregate everything. So what does this tell us? What does this mean? What is the Nintendo Switch 2 capable of? And yes, we do know that it is called the Nintendo Switch 2, not the Super Nintendo Switch. So a little extra side information. There was a leak about the Nintendo Switch 2 dock, which has way more hardware in it than the first Nintendo Switch dock. So this is going to be able to this is going to enable the Nintendo Switch 2 console to do things more powerful than it would have been able to do otherwise with a dock that is unassistive, is what we call it, unenhancing. The dock is enhancing, and so that's why I think the console is going to be able to do some kind of interlacing and hit 4K, probably, most likely, at 60 hertz, even on non-resource intensive games. I just, you know, it's just gonna set it. Nintendo's gonna set a standard. There's gonna be a bar, and if you can pass that bar, you're not gonna be allowed to pass that bar because it doesn't make sense. It's just how Nintendo operates, you know. Uh, and talking about the final thing, which is the launch lineup. Um, we now have a leak about the launch lineup that was somewhere between vague and not vague. Somebody said, "quote The Nintendo Switch 2 launch lineup is going to look very, 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 very similar to the Nintendo Switch 1 lineup." So don't take that with a grain of salt. It's more than likely accurate based on the credentials of the leaker. Um, and so we pull it back up. So mind dates, this looks like what we're gonna see for the official Nintendo Switch 2 lineup. Um, it might not be all strictly launch lineup, but these are relatively certain. These are games that we are going to be getting. Super Mario Sunshine 2, confirmed. Mario Kart 9, confirmed. And Metroid Prime 4, confirmed. The next main entry in the Animal Crossing series, Animal Crossing 6 or New Horizons 2, confirmed. And it seems that we're going to be getting Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 3, a finish to the trilogy, uh, a game following Tears of the Kingdom. And then on top of that, it looks like we are going to see Splatoon 4. So that pretty much summarizes everything that we know. And considering that Nintendo hasn't, you know, come out with their big faces and said, hey, here's the console, this is what it looks like, and this is coming, it's still a little bit surprising that the console can just like be bum rushed on the market by March when we still haven't had an official press conference, you know, a Nintendo Direct. They didn't participate at the Game Awards. I don't even think they participated at E3 during Summer Games Fest. At least that's what I've been calling Summer Games Fest. This is a digital E3. Um, so yeah, things are interesting. So Nintendo's playing by their own rules. They're trying to perhaps they're even trying to redefine the game, and you know, people are trying to throw Xbox into the pit, saying that they're done for, and negatively disparaging them so much that they might or might not take a hit. I mean, it's Microsoft, but that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to go over. Yeah, compare and contrast. Yeah, 8 gigabytes of RAM compared to the 12 that we're actually getting. 64 gigabytes of onboard storage compared to the actual 256 minus 100 minus 80. I really thought Nintendo would skimp. I'm actually really surprised that they're not. Uh, I completely called the LCD screen. I completely called the new SD card technology. Uh, it remains to be seen whether or not the console actually is capable of a true 4K based on the specs. I feel like based on everything that's been revealed about the console, I think I called it that we're not going to have true 4K. That we're going to have some kind of up res solution. And on top of that, I called that the console was going to be backwards compatible. It's just very obvious that that's what it's going to be. Even the Wii U was backward compatible. Uh, Now we have nomenclature that makes a little bit more sense, so people will be less confused about what the console is and what it can do. There are going to be Switch 2 games that are only going to run on the Switch 2, and all your Switch 1 games are going to come along the ride with you. and you're going to be able to install them straight from the eShop or play anything you want physically. And there was this really cool hub adapter that came out for the Wii U for Super Smash Bros. And that thing, just in case you didn't know, is completely usable with the Nintendo Switch for the next version of Super Smash Bros. So to me, it just seemed like a logical jump that it was made for the Wii U and it worked on the Nintendo Switch. So if it works on the Nintendo Switch, it's probably going to work on the Switch too. Um, I doubt that the Joy-Con are going to be any better than any other console that Nintendo has made historically. Nintendo's just bad at making controllers. It's just something about Japan. I hate Sony's controllers. I hate the PlayStation controllers. There isn't a Nintendo controller that I love besides the Switch Pro controller. I have extremely low expectations for what the new Joy-Con are actually going to feel like when they're in your hands, but we know exactly what they look like, and they swear that they've solved the stick drift issue, uh, or at least leakers are swearing that they have, and we now know that they suction grip onto the console, and there are mag release buttons. You touch the button, and the controllers just pop off. Obviously, you can't do it both at once, right? Console just drops. Um, and then the dock has a really pretty design, and it's got hardware in it. So that's going to be interesting to see the interaction between what a user gets out of the game handheld wise and what a user gets out of the game when it's docked. But I'd love to see more touchscreen features. I'd love to see some sort of hub where multiple Nintendo Switch 2s could all connect. Who knows what the plan is? This might be just phase one. And I think last but not least, I want to talk once more about the failures of the Wii U. I don't know, it's really interesting to me, the sort of similarities, the analogousness of the Switch 2 and the Wii to the Wii U. Um, the Switch was a miracle moment. Um, they killed the Game Boy while it was still alive. And they undermined and replaced the product with a superior product um, that is handheld. During a moment in time where people were being told to stay indoors, you know. So the video game market overexpanded beyond rational reason, and a lot of speculators overassumed that people would stay longer. Video games fill their niche for certain people. In general, a lot of people are casual, but ultimately, not everybody plays video games, and they haven't become so commonly, absolutely worldwide accepted as a pastime. So what we see is a leveling out in the growth of the sale of consoles, of possession and ownership. Um, so what I think Nintendo's walking into, unfortunately, is a disaster, just like the Wii U, because the Switch 2 is late. The Switch 2, it does not match its compatriots in stride. It didn't come out the same time as the Series X or the PS5. Nintendo is barely stepping foot to meet these two guys at the same generation. Late, late. The price tag is huge. How many people are gonna go, hey, I need a Switch 2? There aren't gonna be so many games that are gonna sell the console, and we still don't truly know what actually is a launch title, aside from Metroid Prime 4. And because of this, because of Nintendo keeping things too close to their chest, uh, if the console really does launch in March, there are going to be a lot of ignorant consumers. There are going to be a lot of people who just aren't going to know about the product, aren't going to be prepared for the product, and aren't going to find the product necessary. I have high hopes for the Joy-Con. I wish Nintendo the best, and I can't wait to get my hands on the latest Pokemon game. And Nintendo has been teasing Super Mario Sunshine 2 for a long time now, about 2 or 3 years. Um, And Mario Kart 9 was a shoe-in. And because of the pandemic success of Animal Crossing, I think it was very obvious that they'd be gearing up for the next one to prep for the Nintendo Switch 2. It's about 5 years, 4 years, every new console for a new launch of a new Animal Crossing game. So I think once again, it's not so much a prediction as like there was a given. Like we should know that it was coming. And Splatoon has kind of become a mainstay franchise. It is a representation of modern hardcore gaming on Nintendo consoles, which Nintendo doesn't really do, doesn't really engage with. You know, like we love Legend of Zelda games, but the reality is like there aren't many competitive multiplayer games on Nintendo consoles because multiplayer games are serviced more appropriately by systems in which you can communicate to other human beings, right? And yeah, Splatoon is here to stay, and Splatoon is back with a vengeance.